There is a very disturbing truth about modern history, and it is usually not said out loud. For America, wars were never only about survival, justice, or freedom. Those were just the visible face of the narrative. On the unseen side, there was always money. Every war was not just a front where soldiers and weapons clashed. It was also a massive financial stage. While the public sent their children to the families lived in hardship, somewhere in the background the financial machinery was quietly working, turning tragedy into profit. America did not only fight wars. It learned how to make money from wars. And this understanding became one of the cornerstones of the global financial order we live in today. To understand this, we need to go back a bit, to the First World War. When this Great War broke out in 1914, America was not directly involved. Europe was consuming itself. Britain, France, Germany, Austria-Hungary. Millions of people were being sent to the fronts, arsenals were being emptied, state treasuries were rapidly draining. War was devouring money even faster than soldiers. And right at this point, an opportunity emerged for America. From across the Atlantic, American industry and American banks stepped in. This is how the role of being the arsenal of democracy began. Wall Street giants like J.P. Morgan made massive deals with the governments of Britain and France. Loans were extended, weapons were sold, wheat, steel, coal, and ammunition flowed into Europe. It's important to pause here and think about this. When we talk about billions of dollars in the 1910s, that was like talking about trillions today. Figures larger than even the federal budget itself were being discussed. And all of that money was lent with interest. So every bullet fired at the front was not only aimed at the enemy, but was also increasing the debt owed to American banks. America officially entered the war in 1917, but by that point the nature of the situation had already changed. If Britain and France lost, Wall Street would lose too. So the war was no longer just a political matter. It was a financial one. The line between national security and financial interest had almost disappeared. The public, however, was told a different story. Buying bonds called Liberty Bonds was presented as an act of patriotism. Posters showed Uncle Sam pointing his finger and saying, "I want you." Celebrities traveled from city to city selling bonds. Even children saved their coins to buy war savings stamps. For the first time in history, a country had turned its entire population into a machine that lent money to the state. But let's be honest. Ordinary people contributing a few dollars were not the ones who truly kept the system running. The real winners were the bankers and industrialists sitting at the top. Factories ran non-stop, profits exploded, and the power of the financial world grew enormously. And a very important threshold was crossed. War was no longer financed only by taxes, but by debt and financial instruments. This method became permanent. In the Second World War, this model grew even larger. Europe was once again devastated. America once again stepped in with production. Roosevelt declared that the country would be the arsenal of democracy. By the time the US officially entered the war, factories were already running day and night. Tanks, planes, ships, ammunition. Production was at a frenzied pace. The financial side moved just as fast. The Treasury issued war bonds. The Federal Reserve supported them. The same message was given to the public again: invest your savings, save your country. More than 85 million Americans bought war bonds. The money raised exceeded $185 billion. That was more than half of the total cost of the war. Here you can see the system's cleverness. Sacrifice was packaged as investment. The public, without fully realizing it, had become the state's biggest creditor. Meanwhile, large corporations were earning guaranteed profits through military contracts. The state paid in advance and took on the risk. Factories produced weapons, shareholders profited. War had become not just a catastrophe, but a smoothly running economic engine. And behind the scenes, something else extremely critical was happening. The gold standard was effectively coming to an end. The dollar was gradually breaking away from gold and turning into a currency backed by the power of the American state. With Bretton Woods, the dollar became the world's reserve currency. This was a direct result of the wars. Europe was in ruins, America had grown stronger. After 1945, this order did not end. The Cold War began, and military spending became permanent. The defense industry, energy, technology, all were fed by state budgets. This was called military Keynesianism. War spending was no longer an exception, it was an economic strategy. And here is the crucial point. If you build a system where war produces profit, conflict never fully ends. Defense companies win. Banks win. Politicians win. The cost is always paid by the public, through inflation, taxes, and debt. By the time the Vietnam War came, this system was already well established. The war was lost on the battlefield, but financially, no one really lost. Weapons were sold, loans were extended, interest kept accumulating. The inflation that exploded in the 1970s was the clearest demonstration of how this burden was passed on to the public. In 1971, the dollar's link to gold was completely severed. Money became fully fiat. It derived its power from the military and the economy. Then came oil, the Middle East, and the petrodollar system. Money and war became inseparable. The Gulf War, Iraq, Afghanistan. No matter the outcomes, financially the system always won. America did not win many wars on the battlefield, but it never lost on the balance sheet. War was profitable regardless of the outcome. Today, the military-industrial complex that Eisenhower warned about is fully intertwined with the financial system. Defense budgets are enormous. Wall Street finances these debts. The cycle keeps turning. And this directly affects your life. Grocery prices, inflation, taxes, debt. All of these are parts of this system. Even if war seems far away, you feel its effects in your pocket. The real issue is this. Crises, wars, and chaos are not a flaw of the system. They are a feature of it. For some, they are opportunities. For most, they are traps. This is where real financial education truly begins. Not just in learning how to budget, but in understanding how this order actually works. One day, when they tell you war is for freedom, remember this as well. War is also about balance sheets, interest rates, and profits. And if you don't understand this, the system will quietly crush you again. History gives answers. You just have to know how to really look.